In a world of fantasy adventure, centaurs are real, and the most powerful of them all, Matsukaze, is captured by warring humans to be used as a weapon of destruction. Can he escape? Who's going to help him? And what adventures will he find along the way? We're going to talk about it in our review of Centaurs, Volume 1 from Ablaze Publishing. See you in 3. And welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Centaurs, Volume 1 from Ablaze Publishing's Manga line. But before we get started, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for a notification. Your attention is greatly appreciated, and make sure to stay tuned through the end for the final score. Let's talk about the credits. Centaurs Volume 1 is almost a one-man show. It's written, drawn, not many colors, there's just a few on the cover, and the cover art is all completed by Ryu Somiyoshi. So hopefully I'm saying that right. However, with lettering assist and translation by CCCI, which is a company that performs Japanese to English translations as well as doing the lettering. Let's talk about the story. The story is set in feudal Japan, where humans previously had been living in harmony with centaurs, who are primarily mountain tribes and southern tribes and field tribes, are all different kinds of tribes of centaurs. Big, powerful, wise, graceful creatures of peace. However, when the humans of the world set in this feudal Japan era became big and powerful and started warring with each other for control of territory and land, they started capturing the centaurs and enslaving them to be weapons of destruction. They would ride them into battle. They trained them to be fierce fighters under servitude and duress, and it basically decimated a large majority of the centaur population. And part of what that breaking in process, which is extremely brutal and scarring and dangerous, is it was very common for these Japanese feudal lords to cut off the arms of the centaurs, so they could still ride, they could still run, they could still ram you, but they couldn't use their arms to grab you or throw you off. So it was a form of, not quite gelding, but just a form of enslavement to cut off centaurs' arms. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Enter the character who is mythically known as the Stone Tiger. His real name is Matsukaze. Big, powerful centaur whose characteristic is this long mane of red hair. And so one day he intervenes when his son, or his adopted son, Gonta, came down from the mountain when he shouldn't have, and he's surprised by a bunch of the Japanese warriors. Matsukaze tries to intervene, and he's captured in the process. Gonta gets away. But the person who helps bring Matsukaze down, because he's so big and powerful, is another centaur who's been enslaved by the humans and sort of indentured to them, another centaur by the name of Kohibari. And Kohibari is armless, and he's much smaller, but he chooses to help the humans bring Matsukaze down. But Gonta escapes and runs away into the mountains, hopefully to return to whatever home that he can manage to find. Later, the feudal lords try to break Matsukaze in. They keep his arms tied behind him, but they keep his arms intact because he's so big and so strong and so powerful. Later, Kohibari quietly approaches Matsukaze and says, "Look, I know I captured you, but I only did that because I need somebody to help me escape. And that's why I had them chase after you instead of Gonta, your boy, because I knew if I could help you get with me inside of here, you can help me escape this encampment, this compound. And that's why I let Gonta escape, because I knew if I could get with you, the two of us, we can work out a deal to escape." Begrudgingly, Matsukaze eventually agrees, but is very grudging. And he said, and the plan is this: if they can get to this upcoming showing, sort of like a country fair, where a lot of the centaurs are shown off and bought and sold, very much like a cattle market or a cattle auction, where the different centaurs are shown the riding prowess, the ones that still have arms shown that their battle combat prowess with archery and all different kinds of combat styles, a lot of the lords and a lot of the guards will be distracted because there's so many festivities going on where they're drinking and they're eating and they're not paying attention. We can use that as cover to escape. Eventually, Matsukaze is still grudging, but he agrees. During the festival, during one night of the festival, Kohibari manages to get a knife that he was planning to steal for a very long time. He gets to Matsukaze in the middle of the night, cuts off his ropes, and the two of them escape. But they don't quite get escape without being noticed. A fire is set in the compound. There's all kinds of cover and chaos and confusion, but they still manage to escape, and they head off into the woods, racing kilometers away, and eventually making their way, giving themselves at least a head start. Along the way, we find out that Kohibari was captured when he was a small boy, or a small centaur, I should say, and he doesn't know how to survive and make do for himself in the middle of the forest. So Matsukaze is constantly shooing him away from stepping on a snake where he could get bitten, eating berries that could be poisonous, or interacting or just running across animals that might not might attack them, like bears and forest predators. They eventually get to a small cabin because they reach the base of a large mountain where Matsukaze knows his extended family is living up in a secret cave up on the other side of that mountain, and he always told Gonta that if you ever got in trouble and we got separated, make for that mountain crest where we have extended family there, and then I will come find you. So he's banking on the fact that his son, or adopted son, when he escaped, he managed to get over that mountain crest and that he can meet them there. But they have to prepare because it's a treacherous climb. There's all kinds of wintry weather, and Kohibari is not prepared for that and doesn't know what to do. Unfortunately, as they're making ready to prepare to start climbing the mountain, Kohibari falls sick because he ate some grass that was poisonous, or at least poisonous for his constitution, and he got very sick, and they had to wait it out a few days. But during the course of this time, Kohibari and Matsukaze, they're kind of bonding a little bit, especially because Kohibari is very much looks up to Matsukaze for his wisdom, for his strength, for his understanding of the woods and the legends and the generations of capability that have been passed down through all the centaurs. It's all this learning and knowledge and basically the kind of almost like a father-son type of bond, or at least an older brother, younger brother kind of bond. And Kohibari is just so not enamored, that's not necessarily the right word, but just in need of that connection that you would have for like a father figure, an older brother, and he doesn't want to be left alone, and he needs somebody to teach him how to do it. And Matsukaze recognizes in Kohibari as somebody also who needs that connection and somebody that he can teach and pass on his information since Gonta is not around. And so the two of them are starting to get to know each other and to bond and form either a father-son relationship or a brotherly relationship. Then they eventually go up the mountain once Kohibari eventually starts to feel better. They've got some coverings from a skin or from a deer that Matsukaze captured, and they have some dried meat. They have skins to keep them warm. They finally go up the mountain. Unfortunately, when they get to the crest near the snow line of the mountain, Kohibari was not careful, and he accidentally sets over a landslide, or a landslide with the snow. And Matsukaze pushes Kohibari out of the way and sends him along, saying, get to a shack that we have a little bit further up. I'll meet you there. But in the course of trying to shove Kohibari out of the way, Matsukaze is injured, and Kohibari has to drag Matsukaze all the way up to the shed that is halfway to the crest that'll get them to where his family is staying. They make it to the shed, but Matsukaze is injured, at least in his foot, and there's another surprise. There's a human waiting for them at the shack. It's just an old man, just a lowly farmer. They think nothing's wrong. Kohibari thinks the old man is nice and can trust him. Matsukaze is definitely not in the mood to trust any human at this point, and he's suspicious of the man's just outright, almost over-the-top kindliness. The next day, after they've had a chance to rest and maybe even eat a little bit, they find out that, yes, indeed, the old man has betrayed them because he heard that the Japanese lord who captured Matsukaze a few days ago has put out a bounty to have him captured, and he's willing to pay handsomely. So this old man, wanting to at least retire in some kind of comfort and not have to break his back for so many years to the end of his life, is sort of sorry, but not sorry. I'm going to betray you. I betrayed you by sending off my falcon as a messenger to let them know that you are here. So there's a tussle. The old man is killed, but Matsukaze gets shot in the gut. It's grazed. It's not a killing shot, but it's enough to weaken him. And so they set off to crest the mountaintop because they have no choice, because they know the Japanese lords are coming to capture them again. They eventually make it through blizzards and snow and ice and everything else to get to a very hidden cave where Matsukaze finds one of his brothers still there. But surprise, Gunta hasn't made it. And so now they have at least a place to stay, have a little bit of extended family, and Kohibari is feeling extremely guilty because he caused the avalanche that injured Matsukaze in the first place, and he also trusted the old man when he shouldn't have. And now this is all combining to, and he was also the one that helped the Japanese lord capture Matsukaze in the first place for selfish reasons. And so now Kohibari is overwhelmed with guilt, and his brother, by the name of Koume, has said, now you can stay with us, just at least until Gunta shows up, because it'll be better for Gunta if there are more people here to greet him, and also you can rest and recover and help us if anybody else shows up. And then the volume concludes with somebody showing up, but it's not who you think it is. That's the end of Centaurs Volume 1 from Ablaze Publishing, their manga imprint, or the manga line. What do we think about Centaurs Volume 1? Lots of great character action. The world building is done very quickly and efficiently. I like that the world is kind of seems familiar in the sense that it's feudal Japan, that time, area, and location, but the integration of centaurs into the world feels very organic and feels very natural. And the idea that they use them for weapons of war when they capture them, that they treat them as subhuman, has a very relatable quality to it. And the cutting off of the arms feels like something that cold, heartless warlords would do as a form of enslavement. It's very demeaning and it's very oppressive, and there's a lot of relatability to this story. There's no necessarily overt messaging about races or racism or anything like that. It's just more like, it feels like something that you could believe. It feels like a world that makes sense given the existence of centaurs in the first place. And then there's a secondary layer where the emotional bond between Matsukaze and Kohibari feels like it's developing very naturally, very organically. There's a lot of emotion that's happening primarily on Kohibari's side because he's acted with a lot of selfishness, but also at the same time showing that he has heart and that he's just trying to make the best of a bad situation. It makes sense. It feels right. It feels natural. It feels organic. I don't know where necessarily that their relationship is headed as far as whether or not Kohibari will eventually stay on as a sort of a permanent younger brother or son, or how that was going to work out. And then there's also the implication that when Gota eventually shows up, or hopefully he will, that how that changes the dynamic and where that all comes into play. What didn't we like about Centaurs Volume 1? Honestly, I don't think there was anything wrong or major from a flaw perspective. The story makes sense. The adventure makes sense. There's plenty. There's a goal. There's a destination. There's momentum towards that destination. The world building is excellent. The character building is excellent. There's really no major critiques that I could say is anything wrong with this. If you like manga and you like fantasy and you like kind of the concept in general, it's very strong. So there's really no major flaws with this issue. What do we think about the art? So Ryo Sumiyoshi is the writer as well as the artist, and so of course the panel and the scripting work hand in hand seamlessly because that makes sense. There are some panels, and the design of the centaurs is amazing. Looks great. It feels like something that you would picture. It sort of personifies the intent of taking these sort of majestic creatures and then turning them into soldiers, even against their will. So a lot of the designs make sense. Some of the time, some of the Centaurs that have armor, it makes sense. It feels logistically right, but there's also flourish and flair that makes sense for the aesthetic of that time period. The art looks great from the design standpoint. If there's a flaw or a nitpick that's a little bit stronger than just a simple nitpick, is sometimes the choreography is a little too fluid, because there are scenes where movements happening, but because there's so much action blurring going on, you can't quite tell exactly what's happening. So there are some panels where a little bit cleaner line work, a little bit cleaner detail would have made it obvious, or at least apparent, what's happening. So there are some panels where there's just blurs and swooshes, which gives you the impression of momentum and energy, but it's almost too much because you can't quite tell what's happening. So that kind of throws you off a little bit. Final thoughts. What do we think of Centaurs Volume 1? Lots of emotional depth, an interesting concept, great artwork from a design point of view, and the whole thing is and it was a very quick read. This volume is over 170 pages, and it moves very fast. So great pacing overall. So solid overall. If there's one downside or one flaw that you could really point to as just something that kind of took you out a little bit, is some of the action panels are just not clean enough to tell what's going on. There's too much blur, and there's too much chaos in some panels, so you sort of lose what you're looking at. It just looks like a blob of stuff happening that isn't really clear, and because it's in black and white, that doesn't help. Color might have helped distinguish it, but the black and white kind of makes it almost like a smear, but just a blur of mass, and you can't quite tell what's going on. So therefore, we're going to give Centaurs Volume 1 from Ablaze Publishing, their manga imprint, an 8.8 out of 10. Let us know what you think. Do you like Ablaze's manga line? Are you reading Ablaze's manga line? Do you like manga in general? Do you like fantasy manga in general? Let us know. I want to know what you think, and I want to hear your opinions. If you've picked this up and read it, what do you think? So I hope you enjoyed this review. Please stay tuned through the outro for the next one.